As someone who has experience, I guess, in communities of urban youth, how do you see the mobilization of urban youth happening around issues of climate change? Because as you say, like, it's not something that's necessarily taught in public schools or something that's popular. How do you see like that happening within that demographic?
Good question. I believe that what has to happen is that conversation has to begin with the young people, that they might be able to identify why they are stakeholders in a healthy planet Earth. And that comes from us now engaging them where they are, getting a sense of their value system and showing them how their value system is impacted by what's going on a global level. For instance, the employment crisis that they're well aware of. They want money. They want to buy this and to buy that. Well, there's a reason why the employment situation is the way it is, and why things are costing so much. And once we can explain that to them in a language that they can understand, then they can start to have dialogue amongst themselves. And then that will become an animal of its own, just like in their lives and their experiences, they have their own life, their own culture. Basically, what I'm saying is that we have to find a way that their social, political, economical, and cultural appreciations are identified, and then they're connected to the urgency of the climate crisis.
So let me just add a kind of footnote to that. So there were about 4 or 5 people in the room that said they have asthma. And I'm sure they're dealing with the asthma on a one person at a time basis. I mean, they're getting medicine or they're getting the breathers, etc. What would happen if a dozen people in any community who have asthma got together and did a sit-in at one of the coal plants that's creating the asthma and said, hey, yeah, we need to have the breather for ourselves individually, but the whole community needs to be able to take a breath too. And we together can do that. So that would be a way of connecting that absolutely personal individual pain into the community that's creating the pain and ought to respond to it.
The previous question addressed a lot with what I was concerned with, but this is also addressed to you, Reverend. We talked about urban youth not being able to identify with climate change because it's not really about that in urban, it's not about that in urban education. What do you think, as students who belong to like elite academic institutions, what do we do to try to bridge between these communities? Like, I come from a really poor school district in New York, and I can personally speak about how just climate change was not an important topic. We never talked about it. No one cared. We littered, no problem. And as I go to a school that has a lot of money. I go to Williams College, and we care a lot about sustainability there. But how do we, as an academic institution, how do we bring that? And what do you suggest that we do? Should we have a role in bringing that to urban centers?
Yes, I believe so, and I believe the way to do it is technology. I try to recalibrate mindsets in reference to violence. As a matter of fact, this is a perfect segue for me to pass around my rest in peace list for you to take a look at it. And what I use is Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, texting, and I communicate the urgency that I feel about youth-on-youth violence, black-on-black violence, and Latino-on-Latino violence by using these venues of social media. So, in this age of climate control urgency, yeah, use that same media, because the only thing they're on there talking about anyway is sex and drugs and movies and Beyonce, and so yeah, Trey Songz, and so yeah, throw in some climate control, throw in some self-love, yeah.
Aspect, like, would it be weird if I would just happen to add all of these people and just talk to them about climate change. I mean, I would find it really weird if someone just added me out of nowhere on Facebook.
And when I started adding people and talking about stop killing one another, stop shooting one another, they thought it was weird.
Yeah.
But now I communicate with over 6,000 young people a day.
Thank you all for your comments. I'm a Green Faith Fellow, so we're religious environmental leaders, at least have been trained to do that. One of the pieces of our training with Green Faith was to do a toxic tour of the Ironbound in Newark and to meet with communities really affected by not just climate change, but all sorts of environmental degradation. And we were really confronted with the issues of environmental injustice and environmental racism. And I'm just putting this out to your community, but did you folks ever think of hosting dialogues for people around the city, around the tri-state area, to come into your communities and really put in our faces what the impact of environmental injustice and environmental racism is doing in communities where the impact is greater and the burden is greater? I know that it was a transformative experience for me.
Here's what's problematic about that. We have become desensitized to the reality of those poisons in our community. We know, we see it every day. We see the buses and the cars and the trucks, and we see on bad quality days how thick the air is, and you can barely, but it is part of everyday life, and it's accepted as such. And our educational system is teaching us something different. It's teaching us how to be consumers and abusers rather than replenishers.
But I'm looking around.
And really what we hope that happens, Jeff and my colleagues, what we hope that happens is that they start to think about it and then to have dialogue amongst themselves. And then, you know, we do youth conferences, we do youth forums, and then at those youth forums, they'll have that to be put on the agenda, along with how do we get Rihanna to come and do a concert in the Armory.
You know, I wanted to
Paul, just say, are you working with We Act?
I was about
Yes,
to say.
Charles
We have the same.
Charles and I have done a lot of work together.
Yeah, We Act is West Harlem Environmental Action, and it's, you know, kind of spelled We Act, and, you know, they were founded 20 years ago by people in the community, and actually Cecil Corbin Mark from We Act is going to be speaking here tomorrow. I don't know if you folks are going to be able to be here tomorrow. But, you know, they have achieved a lot of things for the environment in West Harlem, so it's not all kind of a negative or sad story. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when the city and federal government were putting in that big water pollution control plant that's west of the Henry Hudson Drive, you know, that runs from 135th to 145th Street.
Yeah.
They not only did they get Riverbank State Park put in above that, but they got the pollution control improved substantially, so that the odors that were initially associated with that plant that were wafting over and into the West Harlem community and causing asthma and just a whole bad attitude in the environment, that mostly got cleaned up. Then they went after the bus depots in the neighborhood and got them to some extent cleaned up. They've got bike lanes put in, more green space, etc. So I'm sorry if I'm just
No,
preaching to the choir.
you're absolutely right.
You've been doing
I was
it.
actually a part of that.
Okay, yeah,
So,
I'm still, all right, so
Yeah,
I'm stealing your
absolutely.
thunder.
No,
But
no,
they have
no.
a whole climate thing going on too, and they could definitely use the energy that's here in this room to help with their programs, and that would multiply and give back more benefits to the community.
Just to follow up, that's exactly what I was going to say. The only footnote I would add is maybe when Cecil Corbin Marks is here tomorrow, there could be a little rump meeting, you know, between him and the young people, and he is a wonderful guy, and you know him, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to refer the person over there, who you might not see, has their hand up. Olivia? Oh, I'm going to defer to the young people who came from Harlem. Yeah, I'm so glad you made the effort to come all the way up here, and I want to make sure we have an opportunity to really hear from you all. Is your Reverend Williams' message about what's happening to our planet reaching you? What do you think about it? How are you talking to your friends about it? What do you think needs to happen? I'd like to hear from several of you, just your thoughts about.
Well, for me, I think like the air pollution, like it should be stopped, and a reason for it should be stopped is because like there's a lot of smoking going around, and I think the reason why young people do it is because they see older people do it. So we should just stop smoking in general.
Like a tape recorder, like we'll copy everything that we see as we growing up, and we feel that we can do it too. That we just feel that we can do it if we see like the older people do it.
Like for example, cigarettes. When I was younger, I used to think smoking cigarettes was good, and it turns out like, cigarettes is really horrible.
You get cancer from it.
And I don't smoke till this day. Never smoked. So that's another thing we should stop. Oh, and like stop littering. Like we should treat the streets as if it's our home. That's about it. That's how I feel about the whole air pollution things, global stuff.
Yes, God.
Anybody else? Kenise?
Oh, come on. Kenise, I don't let us hear from you, yeah. I ain't Kenise, that's Kenise.
Put on the spot.
Anyone? Anyone?
You talk.
What about you, Fatu? What do you think?
I'm gonna say. I don't let her. Mo. She be yelling. Who throw chips on the floor? Mo said so. Answer on the question. Oh shit.
I agree on what he said. Smoking is bad.
It's just not just bad for us though. Like it's just bad for the whole world. Yeah, like for the environment.
I truly believe in it, and I think that it is even evident in their lack to articulate the connections that they, in our environment, when you see the trash and the filth, and there are just too many cars on trucks on the street, buses on the street. They don't make that connection to the health risk. They just don't make that connection because their value system is placed somewhere else based on what they're learning in the information that they're receiving. And that earnest rests with us and what we're allowing them not to be exposed to. That's why I was so happy that not only them, I had to turn away dozens and dozens of young people, and they were very upset with me that I had to turn them away, but it was just not financially possible to get them all up here. But that they came, that this group came, and I have the batteries here, if you will. I know that Reverend Williams took us up there and they were talking about environmental justice and carbon pricing. What is carbon pricing? I don't know what it is, but Reverend Williams had us up there in a room with all these white people and they were talking about it and the food was good. And that's what we need to have happen because it's from the grassroots dialogue, okay, that interest starts to fester. And then they'll start asking the questions on the internet. Well, what is carbon pricing? And what is this campaign about letter writing to the president? These are things that then they'll start to question, and then they'll start making the connections about why the quality of food that they consume is different from the people on south of 96th Street, because that is relevant. And we have to develop the stage where they can find relevancy with what's going on. Yes, ma'am.
I just like to say to you guys, each of you is as important as any other person on the planet to what happens. We really feel like you are the people that we are here to talk to. That if you know, through getting to know you better, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the rest of this year, we are able to make a bond with you and you become empowered to feel like, yes, I can do something about this problem, that can change everything. But, you know, we are powerless like without you. You know, you are just as important as any other person. You can make the big difference. So we just want to say that to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to follow up a little bit about empowering people. And I think that's really when Father Paul co-founded CCC, it was largely about empowering people. How do we get people engaged? And one of the reasons that I'm so drawn to the carbon pricing concept is that it puts the responsibility on individuals. If you follow what Al Gore said in the poster, he says, tax what you burn, not what you earn. So in other words, it's putting the responsibilities on people to think about ways that their carbon input will be less. If you take the cap and trade, that's all about government regulations. It's about the government it's putting in a cap that's going to say you cannot emit more than a certain amount. And for individuals, they're saying, well, okay, the government's taking care of it, nothing I can do. But with a pricing carbon, that's something different. It means that everybody is taking both a responsibility for the problem and a responsibility for the solution. And you put a price on it, so you say, hey, okay, when I drive or when I do all these other things, putting this nasty stuff in the air, I have to pay for it. And in our system, where you have a tax and dividend, 75% of Americans are going to come out on top. So yeah, if you have a huge house and you drive your SUVs all over and you have your private jet, then you're going to come out behind. You're going to pay a lot more than you can get back. But if everybody gets the same check in the mail every month, those people who live in urban areas especially, who watch their consumption, they're going to get more money than they put out. And they're also going to think about, well, okay, my electricity is now more expensive. Driving my car is now more expensive. It's going to be cheaper if I take the subway. It's going to be cheaper if I have a compact fluorescent bulb. And I'm still getting a check in the mail every month, no matter what I do, so I might as well get that check and put out as little, and not pay more for that expensive energy that everybody is going to have to pay for. Because energy prices are going to go up whether we like it or not. With this cap and trade, that's really high the energy. So just, you know, you do these fancy trading back and forth. You have these financial institutions that are going to swap these credits, and only, you know, average person, you ask them, how does cap and trade work? They can't understand it. You ask the average member of Congress, explain to me simply what cap and trade is all about, and it's hard to do it. 10 minutes after the explanation, you don't know what they're saying. So really briefly,
so Tom,
yeah.
what you're saying is that if we find a way to engage carbon pricing, let me put it in terms that my young people can understand, they can get paid by being moderate. They can make money. They can get money off of carbon pricing. Isn't that right? Because it will, instead of it going to the countries and the governments, it'll come back to the people in the community.
It gets recycled back to people.
So if I put in a fluorescent bulb and instead of driving a big Cadillac, I get me a little electric car, I can look at the end of the month and see a check and I can get paid.
And the thing is, just to be correct about it,
passing around these
the guy who drives the big Cadillac will also get the same check. But the guy who drives the big Cadillac and has the private jet, the amount they pay into this government trust fund is going to be 10 times more what they get back. But if you're careful about what you spend, then what you pay in is a lot less than what you get back.
I just want everybody in the room to notice that when you started talking about getting paid, they became intuitive. Now they're paying attention. Yes. Shakima, you want to ask something?
Okay. Yeah, but I forgot.
Okay.
There was a big reaction from your kids when some of the photographs went on the trade. What was that about?
It was them.
Yeah?
It was them.
Oh, in the picture?
We just have a few minutes left, so a few more questions.
By Al Gore's Climate Project as a faith-based presenter on global warming. And so I was invited last June to give a presentation on global warming on Mount Washington, which is in New Hampshire, to a group of middle school students from an inner city church from Boston. It was all young women. And when we got there, we started with an exercise in just places of power, places that make us feel powerful, places on earth that we love, whether it's our backyard or a park or whatever. And then I talked about mountains, because we were on a mountain, and how there's some people who, and my family are from the Adirondack Mountains, but there are people who live in mountains that love their mountains, whose mountains are being turned inside out so that we could have electricity. And that grabbed them, because they were really excited to be seeing a mountain, which we never got to see because it was covered with clouds, because Mount Washington's too high. But they saw the foothills. So they were in the mountains, thinking about mountains, thinking about living there, and then having your home turned inside out. And so then I just said, well, you know, if we use less electricity, they won't have to keep turning mountains inside out for coal. And I never talked to them about global warming. We spent the rest of the weekend with them coming up with ideas for how to use less electricity. And the one thing I said about global warming is, let me know if you see snow on top of the mountain. And there wasn't any, because it was the warmest spring ever, I mean consistently, all 3 months, and no snow. So that's all we had to talk about. The earth is getting warmer, the weather is changing, the climate is different. And we just spent the weekend talking about ways to use less electricity. At the end, we all shared from the weekend. We had been worried about how do you explain the science. At the end of the week, and when everybody shared what they got out of it, we got more wisdom from them to us adults about, gee, we have to do things together. We have to do things in ways that we don't use so much of the Earth's resources. They got it like that, and they were turning it around for us. So the challenge isn't as great as we think, because people are people, and they care about the Earth.
Did you have a final question? This is the last one. Yeah, because it's 12:30.
Didn't say nothing.
Who didn't
She didn't get an opportunity.
All right,
She didn't
please.
get an opportunity.
Somebody who didn't speak yet?
I have a quick thing, I guess.
Make it a short one, please.
Yeah, just like a comment, I guess, from like, I went to public school in New York also, and I like came to Wesleyan and started talking about like how all these systems like, and how like stuff in our daily lives is like not a coincidence. Like it's, you know, things like I took classes, like sociology classes, where we learn about policies in the 1950s that like created segregation and created like different mortgage pricing, and like why, like where I grew up, and like why when I moved from like Queens to Long Island there's like a better supermarket, and like why there's all these issues. And just like I think that there's like a lot of people was saying like, oh, you have to like learn, like you don't know about like what's going on, you know, you have to like learn about all these other things. But I just feel like growing up in a place like, you already know like what your reality is, and you know so much more than so much of everybody else, like so many other people who don't live in the same like inner city or like whatever kind of community you live in. And just like we can just engage with what we know and like be angry about like why, like I don't know, there's issues in our like public schools, and there's like issues in our communities, and like you don't need to know, like it's always important to keep learning, but you like what everybody knows is important, and you can always just engage with that and just be angry about like, and you know, tell people like listen to what I have to say, it's just as important and it's a different worldview. So I don't know, it's like this whole climate conference of people talking about like what I know and let me teach you something, but everybody, regardless of like what background in like school or everybody has something to add. And that's like when you go to like, I hope everybody who's in high school now is like thinking about college, and like when you go to college you can have like so much to teach everybody else, like about, you know, regardless of like how good your public school was, you have your own reality, and that's so like important.
Thank you. That was a great note on which to end our gathering. The wisdom of young people, because they are the hope of the future. So let's give a big hand, especially the young people.